Good afternoon, guys. Welcome to today's live stream. As usual, I will give it a couple of minutes to give everyone a chance to join in. And then we'll go from there. As always, as well, if you have any questions or any comments or any kind of charts that you're watching today, let me know. We've had some GDP data out of the US, as well as some ECB data. So we'll see how the euro is getting on with that, as well as some potential moves for the US dollar. Actually came out a lot better than expected. Unemployment claims did rise, though, from 200k to 210. So a little bit of a mixed announcement there, but GDP came in a lot higher than anticipated. So I thought the market would take that more into consideration. Actually seeing a little bit of downside to the US dollar at the moment, heading into the start of this US session. Hey, Justin, hope you're well. Yeah, so let me know what you're up to, guys, what you're looking to trade at the moment. We're going to break down a few charts as well. Was looking at the potential dollar CAD continuation. This is kind of what we pointed out previously. I like the idea of being long dollar CAD, but we are now coming into an area of resistance up at this 138.50 handle. Let me just change the angle here. Yeah, so we've got the 138.50 handle coming into play at the moment on dollar CAD. So this is going to be an interesting sort of setup in here. This is obviously a daily level of resistance. So, yeah, when the market comes into these resistance levels, I like to start making myself aware of what could potentially happen. We are obviously coming into the end of the month as well, so might move on to some seasonal analysis in a bit. If I can get the seasonal data up, we can go through a little bit of that seasonal. Here we go. Equity clock is the one I was looking for. So I might have a little look at some US seasonal patterns and things like that. We might have a look at some other bits and bobs. Let's see if I can find the area that I need to be in. Currencies, here we go. Future pound, future US dollar index futures. Actually, looks like we get a little bit of a seasonal run on the dollar through October. So let's have a little look at this. Let me just increase that so you'll be able to see it a little bit better. But yeah, just looking at the seasonals on the equity clock. So this is a 20-year range. This is an average of what happens over a 20-year period. It's pretty up to date. It was to the end of 2022, so really up to date data. And the importance of seasonality is not necessarily that we use it as a tool to necessarily make decisions with, but it can be something that we use to add confluence to some analysis that we have. Obviously, also we need to recognize if the pattern is being followed necessarily. And I like to identify more the tops and bottoms that it could suggest. Okay, what I mean by that is where you see these peaks in the sort of lows through there. And obviously what I've noticed here is October does have a potential low. Okay, so typically through sort of the end of October till the sort of mid to end of November, we usually see an average rise out of the US dollar index. Actually quite a strong rally if you consider the fact that you look over the overall chart. a move from that sort of 0.6% up to above 1.4%. So through this period, the US dollar could actually be coming into a little bit of a seasonal bullish sort of period right now. And we are starting to see, obviously, the US dollar continue that bullish move. Also, we can kind of have a little look at how price reacted at the start of August and also mid to end of September as well. Because obviously, if we see those confluences that around those times we saw the US dollar index rise essentially, then there is a good strong possibility that it could do that again and that we could get this seasonal bullish run. Obviously, good thing to note as well, through the mid to end November, we can potentially anticipate that to come to some kind of end and see a little bit of a downside period until the sort of end of December, start of January. So yeah, looking for that potential move as well to happen, because that could be a very, very strong move to look out for. So maybe the dollar's going to remain a little bit more bullish for the time being. If we have a little look back at that US dollar index, let's just go and have a little look where that sort of turning point was. So I can see already that it was towards the end of July more than the start of August. Obviously, August being here. So it was more mid to end of July before we had that sort of bullish run. Obviously, September forms a low as well, which we can see through there. So is this October's low? Essentially, is that 105.50 the low? And are we going to see another move back towards the 108, which is something that we still think could potentially happen here for the US dollar index? Maybe the 108 level is that sort of top point before we reach the sort of seasonal bearish pattern in November. Obviously, that high in there could be something to consider. So yeah, it looks like we are following a little bit of the seasonal pattern right now. So 108 is still definitely something I like the idea of. If we breach 108, then obviously there's other things that we can look at, like the 110s maybe, 111s, or even all the way back up into sort of the 112, 113 area. So whether that will happen, obviously, is a different sort of question we have to ask as it unfolds. But for the time being, we're finding support at 105.50. The next level of resistance, we do have this high in here, but also that 108 is a good level, I think, for potential seasonal downside pressure. Hi, Rygite. Hope you're doing well. So yeah, dollar looking pretty interesting here at the moment. Obviously, that GDP data was quite strong. We're seeing a little bit of a pullback to the sort of rally that we've had this week. So in the week ahead analysis video, I talked about last week's candle, which is basically this range on this 4-hour chart. We breached the 4-hour chart to the downside, and this was the level that I pointed out as a really important level to look for, which was just around the 105.50, this sort of zone down through here. And yeah, price found support. We haven't really looked back since finding that support. We've had very shallow pullbacks in the market. The market's kind of headhunted these, I suppose, liquidity points, these previous highs, and it's now broken through those highs. So that's also kind of given me the idea that there's a potential continuation for the US dollar. We might just be seeing a short-term relief to that rally that we've had. We are coming towards the end of the week. And if we look on this daily chart as well, and if I zoom right in, you can see we are kind of flirting with these daily highs at this current moment in time. I would like to see a little bit more aggressiveness out of the US dollar. I would like to see a strong sort of daily close there, because that would just give me a little bit more confidence that buyers are happy above these swing highs. So then I could say, yeah, I like the idea of trying to target the 107.20s and above. So I would prefer that. Otherwise, I think that if we do kind of fail at around these highs, there's a little bit of risk for a move back to the downside, potentially move back into the 106 before sort of another rally there. So I do like the dollar index. I do like the idea of heading for those 108s. There's just some precautions we need to take around that. We don't really want to get long dollar at key swing highs, right? We want to be long dollar at support levels. So 106, 105.50 were those support levels to watch out for. So how could that influence the sort of other markets that we're looking at the moment? I was very interested in Kiwi US dollar short, to be honest. I like the idea of price coming down into this 0 spot 57.75. If we look left, this was that sort of support level that formed back in November of 2022. So I like the idea of price coming down into that point. If you actually go to the hourly time frame, you can see that we did actually test in and around that area. So I did get short this market. I was looking to see how price reacted here on this kind of double top. I actually sort of missed this entry in here, which is actually something we spoke about in the live stream on Tuesday. I said if price can come back into this high, there could be a good chance that price starts to push back to the downside. So I saw that. Obviously, that was a little bit too early for me in the morning. That rejection there was 2 a.m. for me, so I didn't manage to trade anything in here. That was then the 6 a.m. close. I was in on this sort of 10 a.m. candle close, and I was looking to try and trade to the downside through here. If you actually go to the 30-minute time frame, you can actually see how this kind of unfolded. We had like a bit of a sort of trend line breach through there, a breach below the 50-30 moving average as well, and these were the areas where we started to see that sort of momentum drive through. So yeah, prices moved aggressively to the downside here. Now we've had a rejection, obviously really strong sort of bullishness coming in here at the moment. That's just because of that US dollar weakness that we're seeing as well. A little bit of risk on as well, to be honest, in the market. If we actually kind of just highlight over on the right hand side here the sort of yen situation. So dollar's a little bit weaker than the yen at the moment. We were kind of above that 150 level, which we'll go talk about in a second. But Aussie yen's having a strong day. We can see that obviously Kiwi yen as well is having a strong day, just down there, plus 0.4% change. So a little bit of risk element in here as well. And obviously we can see at the moment price is trying to test these highs here around about the 58.20. So I think it'd be interesting to see what happens at these highs. Obviously they are quite important highs. They're hourly highs. I'd like to see how price reacts here. If we don't get any kind of reaction there, then we could potentially come back and seek these swing highs in here once more. Whether we get another push down, like, you know, the Kiwi's been fairly weak recently. Again, we kind of highlighted this on Tuesday with the strength meter. So that was a nice market to try and anticipate a bit of a move down on. So yeah, I'll be interested to see if that weakness can come back in. I think if you're going to look for anything around this area of resistance now, I'd probably be more on a 5-minute time frame. I'd be looking for my key patterns here now. And what I mean by that is, do we get some kind of double top pattern? Do we get any kind of, you know, inverse head and shoulder? Sorry, just a normal head and shoulder, sorry. Or do we get any kind of suggestion, a bit like what happened over here, you know? Price comes into the level, you get that sort of double top, that breakout. Price then trades to the downside. You know, you could be looking for something similar, and then, you know, you could just be tracking price via the 50 MA really, you know, because you can see price sort of breaches back below it, and then you get that kind of really good run to the downside. We don't have that at the moment, you know, price aggressively pushing higher, so we'd need to see some kind of change here. Otherwise price is probably going to, you know, breach and continue to the upside. You know, 50 MA is quite a way off at the moment, so what we'd need to see is a consolidation, 50 MA to catch up as well, a breakout of that 50 MA, then that could influence a little bit more selling. But we don't have that here at this current moment in time. You know, it is a Thursday, so sometimes Thursday Fridays can be you know, prone to a bit of a pullback, and that is one that can sort of do that. Any questions so far, guys? Got a few in today. So Vincent, good afternoon. I'm doing really well, thank you. Hope you're doing really well too. We did look at some other charts this week as well, Euro CAD being one of those, with the potential for a little bit of upside as well. We have just gone a bit sideways this week. If we just have a little look, we did breach last week's high. We were looking to see how price reacted in and around these areas where I've drawn this sort of line through there, but it's pretty much around this previous weekly high area, which kind of consolidating at the moment. We have breached back above the 50 MA, so maybe there's a little bit of something that's going on here. Obviously the ECB held interest rates as well, But, EuroCAD was one to watch for me. Got a bullish inside candlestick. Today, we've kind of forming a little bit of an inside candle as well. Double inside candle close could be quite influential for a move to the upside. So I would see how this one does close out today. That could be, a potential for price to then breach that high. I like the idea of price coming into 47.27. That's the consolidation here. We obviously identified a volume level here in the past. So in and around there, we've got the point of control. So I like the idea of price going and seeking that value, seeking that volume through there. So I am keeping an eye on EuroCAD at this current moment in time. I actually got long Euro Kiwi. I got stopped out at break even, and so I'll go through that trade. But basically, it was a move back down towards these lows. So Euro Kiwi, I like the idea of kind of getting along this market again. I was trying to use currency strength to identify if there was an opportunity here. I saw that price basically came back towards these 4-hour lows and thought, is there an opportunity to trade higher? So if we go to the 30-minute time frame, I ended up buying a little bit of a breakout here above the 50 MA. But you'll also notice that when price came down into this support, we had a really classic pattern, and that was the inverse head and shoulders pattern. So I ended up getting long on this candlestick here. My stop loss was just tucked below this low, and really speaking, in hindsight, I should have just looked to target these swing highs. I actually went for a higher level, which was around about the sort of higher resistance level, around about the 184. So my trade looked like this. It was a buy. It was a long above that candlestick high. Stop loss was 65 pips, which was just below that swing low in there. So even if I targeted the high, I would have had a 1.5 R. But unfortunately, I got absolutely nothing out of this. I got a break-even trade, but break-even's fine for me. As long as there's no money lost, I'm pretty happy. But I was trying to go for that 184 move through there. So what happened was everything was looking really good. We were trading up towards this resistance level in here. And again, daily highs are key resistance points. But with my sort of strength and weakness analysis, I sometimes look at it and think, there's a potential for price to obviously break higher. What really troubled me when I kind of saw this morning was the fact that we had this consolidation at resistance, and then price had breached that resistance. So when I got up and looked at my charts, price was around about this area in here, which could have still held the 50 moving average, obviously. So when I saw that and I saw this rejection, I just pulled my stop up to break even, because the way I see it is, if I'm right and my bias is correct, then the break even should not really be too much of a problem. Price could still continue to move to the upside. Alternatively, what I did was I waited, price got stopped out for break even, and then I set an alert above the 50 MA again, because to me, a breach above the 50 moving average can often lead to some impulses higher as well, especially when I'm swing trading. So yeah, I just waited for that to happen. Obviously, that hasn't happened. If I had left that trade open, you can see that, yeah, I'd be very close to stop loss at this current moment in time. I would have been nearly at a loss there. So a little bit of trade management there for you that you can take away with you. Obviously, in hindsight, when I look back at these trades, I like to look at how I could have done things better. I also like to look at how things have performed now I'm out of the trade as well. Was it a good decision to exit as well? And that's what I'll kind of look at here. So obviously, in hindsight, I could have targeted the highs. It was well within the risk reward ratio that, is good, 1.5 R. But I managed it really well because price breached an area. I managed my stop loss, and you can see that the momentum is now starting to shift, and we're starting to see that sort of Kiwi weakness start to actually fade a little bit. So yeah, good management there, I'd say. So happy with how this trade actually played out, even though nothing came out of it. It was a break-even trade. So yeah, we'll look to see how this, if it can obviously trade higher again. Kiwi is starting to just kind of fluctuate a little bit, and that's obviously because we've found support down through here. on the daily chart, but also, like I said, there's a little bit of risk on feeling in the market at the moment. If we go and have a little look around, there's obviously there was a little bit of bullishness around as well, but Kiwi getting a bit of strength after that weakness. We're actually starting to see the stocks fall a little bit, which would go against the sort of risk on play, but we are approaching this level of support in here on the S&P 500. So this is coming into a very, very interesting point. If you are an S&P 500 trader, you might want to take note of this. We spotted this volume level a while ago, around about 41.27. And I like the idea of potentially seeing price come into this point. And point of control is around this area. So yeah, I've got an alert set at 41.27. I want to see how price reacts in and around there. Are buyers still active here, or is price going to start pushing to the downside? I think we might get a minor reaction, so maybe a little bit of a boost up back towards the 4200. Depending on market conditions, then we may see a breach and a continuation. It's kind of like what we were talking about a while ago on the S&P. We were looking at this weekly chart, and really speaking, I was looking at sort of seeing how price reacted towards 46.27. Should have zoned it out really on this weekly chart using those sort of opens and closes and the wick there. That would have been ideal, because we pretty much talked about getting short towards these highs, and you know, it has sort of panned out quite well there for a move down. It's just a shame we weren't really on that. So yeah, we'll see how the S&P reacts. But stocks are starting to fall a little bit today. We've got oil falling as well. Oil usually really good sort of risk tone indicator. We're obviously sticking at that $83 level at the moment. I think a breach of 83, market's going to move more risk off. A hold at 83 could see the markets move more back into that like risk on tone. So definitely something to be aware of. Let's go flick over to dollar yen, because we kind of touched upon it but went past it. 150, I removed my personal limit order on here, because the way price was acting around 150 wasn't something I thought was sort of natural compared to sort of what happened previously. You know, we had a really strong reaction there on the 3rd of October, very strong reaction, lots of selling coming into the market. And I felt that if that momentum was going to continue, and the sort of, let's say, the Bank of Japan intervention was an actual intervention, you usually see price continue to push lower. We didn't get that this time. Price then started to continue to move. Obviously, my bias as well is a bit bullish dollar at the moment. So, you know, I wanted to see if we would get an initial reaction from 150. We came very close, didn't actually test it, and then price dropped to the downside. I was watching this trend line support that I've put in. Now, again, I always say this, I'm not a huge fan of trend lines, but when they are pretty obvious, you know, I like to use them. We could probably even put sort of this one in there as well. I like to use them. I like to just kind of gauge whether it's a different kind of market situation. You know, I especially like them in counter trend moves. And what I mean by that is when you have sort of a trend here, let's say this is a daily chart. Okay, let me just grab a different color. If you were looking at sort of your lower time frames, let's say an hourly, and you saw that there was a trend, there was a change of trend, what I like to do then is one of my sort of confluences to look for that turnaround point is to identify a counter trend line. What I mean by that is I'll place a trend line across here, because if the price is going to remain bearish and we start to see a different change in condition, it should continue to trend like this. If it breaches like that, combined with, let's say, your double bottom pattern, your inverse head and shoulders, things like that, then there's more sort of probability, or a higher probability, that price is going to start creating that trended environment again. So that's the way I like to use trend lines, really. That I find that is the best way to use a trend line. So if you have been using trend lines in the past, I like to use them in sort of counter trend situations, because they can be very useful in telling you when the market's going to jump back into that sort of impulsive phase again. So yeah, that's why I've got that here. Really, if we look at it from a weekly point of view, a breach of 150 could lead up to 152. If we go way back, you know, looking at 164.54 is around these sort of highs back in sort of December 86. Probably could look more towards this high that formed back in May 1990, which is probably that one in there, more around the 160 mark. So I'll probably just put 160 in here. A breach above that could lead to a move like this now. Okay, the one thing I would really be looking for is how does price react to here. Obviously, we've just talked about a potential bullish run seasonally for the US dollar in October. How is that going to influence this market? Is that going to influence it by seeing it continue to push higher, maybe even into the sort of 160? If we're here by November, where we know there's that sort of potential seasonal bearish play, that would be quite an interesting idea then, you know, when you add in all those confluences together. So yeah, dollar yen are very interesting at the moment. Nice little potential sort of continuation there. We're in a very sticky situation at the moment with regards to interventions, because you don't know what level the intervention's necessarily going to be at. So, you know, to try and predict that might be sort of a little bit risky. Instead, if you wait for the reaction, then you can try and anticipate the larger move, which, you know, this was the last time we had a proper intervention, and look how price, you know, moved there. We've moved a significant way. This is a weekly chart, so if we have a little look, let's say we take it from sort of 150, you know, that was a 2,200 pip move, you know, so we don't need to try and catch the intervention top here. We just need to recognize when it is the intervention, and then how we follow steps from the back of that. If we do get a solid intervention at 160, are we going to move down to 150, maybe even to 145? You know, this whole move was, what was the percentage on that? About 16% drop. So if we get to 160, where's 16% taking us? About the 135 handle, maybe even in and around this sort of 138.50s down to 136s. So that's something as well that I like to bring into it. What happened last time? How aggressive was it last time? Are we going to see something potentially similar again? If it's from the 152, the 16% lines really well up with those previous sort of yearly lows in 2023. So, you know, that could also be something we identify and say, okay, that does make sense. But that's all just from technicals. Obviously, we need to add those fundamentals into play. Dollars data's getting pretty strong at the moment. We've got seasonal dollar pressures as well. So dollar yen could continue to trade higher. The Bank of Japan not necessarily doing anything at the minute. So yeah, always got to consider that. Kiwi has pulled back a little bit from that level, but only ever so slightly. We did get quite a big rejection in there. So this is what I mean by, you know, if that's a good level of resistance, what we could potentially see is that sort of double top pattern and the continuation. So yeah, just keep an eye on that one if it's something you're interested in. Other markets then. So obviously Euro Kiwi was something. Talked about Euro CAD potentially as well. Pound Oz was on my sort of radar this morning. I liked the idea of looking at Pound Aussie to the downside, because we did get some pound weakness this morning. Whether that's following through to now is sort of different. The daily chart's kind of throwing me off. You can see that all my lines are a little bit everywhere. I don't like it when it's hard to sort of hard to predict. If I just get rid of a load of lines here, you can see that we're kind of just bouncing between key levels. We've tried to breach the upside here. We rejected quite strongly. So I thought that the momentum would take us down into the lows here. We didn't quite make it to those lows yesterday. Very strong close yesterday. And then today we've breached the high, but, you know, almost starting to come back down again. So, yeah, it's a little tricky market to work out there. I was kind of looking at it from the point of view that we had a breach of this trend line. Again, counter trend line. We've had a breach of that, close below. looking for that momentum to basically take us lower. If we look at the weekly chart, I'm trying to basically anticipate, is that where the lower high is, okay, on this sort of potential trend move here, with the option to see price come all the way back down towards this zone down through there. Okay. That's obviously a strong area of support. This is around about 185 up towards the 186.20s. That zone through there, obviously a strong area of support. We've seen that buying momentum coming through there. So I was just seeing if this was the lower high potential, and is that going to be the move down towards that point before seeing either a continuation or a breach and a continuation. So that's what I was kind of eyeing up there. But yeah, not really seeing any kind of moves there that would make me think, yeah, I'm going to, like, you know, jump on the back of this at the moment. You know, hourly is kind of climbing back above the 50 MA. So yeah, I'd need to see some strong sort of bearishness coming in there. I need to see some strong sort of Aussie plays on that to consider looking for anything in that sort of pound Aussie region. We are kind of coming back into this area, which could be a minor level of resistance. I think if I was to put a fixed range tool on and we look at that, there is going to be a high volume sort of level through there. So if we hold here and it starts to breach, you know, maybe we could look at counter trend moves. Let's look at the 15-minute chart. And what I mean by a counter trend move is I basically put a like that, and then I'd see if price can breach that, and then maybe we'll come to the downside there. If we don't, then price could potentially obviously continue from that point. Right, guy, market feels unpredictable right now. Came out of the long I was in on Euro Aussie. Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's hard, especially when you're seeing those kind of swings on a daily chart. You know, we were looking at that and seeing the sort of bounces. So yeah, it is a little bit tricky at this current moment in time, especially the cross pairs. So whenever the cross pairs start to get a little bit weird, I always like to go back to the majors and have a little look at what the majors are doing. But yeah, we'll see. Obviously, Euro's having a bit of a bad time at the minute. Very, very negative moves going on here. But we are coming into, you know, a potential breach. Now, I still kind of like my monthly analysis here on Euro dollar. You can see with the stochastic confluence as well, I think there's still some potential downside in this market. So, you know, that would coincide with the sort of dollar index strength that I was looking at as well. So really speaking, if I just quickly flick onto the Euro, I can see, sorry, question, Ifran. Looking for some rejection on New Zealand yen to the downside, log it to the downside. What are your views there? Yeah, I actually covered New Zealand yen yesterday in a video, and I was looking at the key sort of weekly and daily levels, and yeah, I liked the idea of being short Kiwi yen as well. I really like the Kiwi weakness coming into this week, and you know, so I do like the idea of that continuing. I've highlighted 86 as a bit of a support point. So my theory was that we've come from this resistance. We're going to try and head for a support area. I've highlighted 86 as that support area. Strong bearish close yesterday, which I like to see. So if I was looking at this continuation going into today, I would be looking at sort of, you know, areas of support and resistance. I've marked out this high in here, 87.80, just because we've kind of got a little bit of a range going on there. Price has breached it, which is great, but now we're back within the range. So that makes me think 87.80 is on the cards before a continuation. What you might want to do is just highlight the 4-hour time frame. You know, we can see that price is trying to pull back. So it's how it reacts in and around this point. So yeah, like I said, I do like that Kiwi weakness. It's whether it's going to continue at the moment. Right, guy, I was short Aussie yen and got stopped out alongside with Kiwi CAD, and then everything reversed when I woke up. Yeah, that's the that's the way trading can be sometimes. I was up quite a bit on Euro Kiwi, and got stopped at break even. I think it's important to know when to manage the positions as well, and it's important to note when your bias is starting to change a little bit. So, like I said, when I was long Euro Kiwi, I understood that when I woke up, I went to my higher time frames and I said, well, how is price reacting to the higher time frames? Get rid of all this. And if my bias of being long was going to be sort of something that held any weight, we would have breached that high. We would have traded through that high. And the fact that we didn't, and this morning we were like double topping and price was coming back down here, I just felt that the what I would want to see out of a market being bullish was no longer there. So I felt that the conditions had changed. I also like to just kind of see how price reacts to an average as well. Like I said, if we're in that sort of bullish phase, look how the market should react to an average. It should just bounce away from it, really. We didn't get that. Price just started to flush through it. So I brought my stop up to break even pretty quickly on that one. So, yeah, but it's always the way. Short Aussie yen. Bit of a range, isn't it? 95.8 is a pretty good sticking point on Aussie yen. I don't particularly like this at all. It's a range. The only thing I would have done, I would have been short Aussie yen 2 from 95.80 if that's what I was looking at the time. That's obviously a key resistance level. Let's see. Let's go to a lower time frame. Let's see if there was any kind of patterns around there. Let's look at the hourly. Didn't really get anything on an hourly. No, that was a pretty strong rejection from that point to go. What's quite cool as well is if you ever see really large sort of moves into a level of resistance, you should be aware, right? Because if you're looking at this at the time, you're probably thinking, and if you're long, you're probably thinking, yeah, this is great, but that's where that buying liquidity has been in the past. And then look, so that's got to be unfortunate, to be honest, Rago, because Aussie yen short doesn't look too bad. I would have, that 95.80 was a good level to look for. Kiwi CAD as well. Did I look at Kiwi CAD this week? I don't think I did. But yeah, Kiwi CAD at support at the moment. See how Euro CAD's doing. I like the idea. Yeah, I quite like the idea here. If it can breach these highs, EuroCAD could be one to watch. Yeah, I think that's all I've got to look at today, to be honest. Kiwi dollar CAD obviously bounced again from the average. It just kind of kept going. Had a huge falling start on the daily. Let's have a look. Is that Is that the one you were looking at? Sorry, that's why you took it. Yeah, I think if you're going to look at patterns, I'd always still look at them in context of where it is. Kiwi CAD's a really interesting market. Back at weekly lows, I like the idea of this sort of downward kind of channel, bearish channel we've got. We seem to react to it every time we're near the highs. The lows, not so much. The lows can kind of fall quite shy of that. I'd have been a little bit more cautious on this one, particularly just because of the weekly area that we were in. Like, I like the idea of being short here. I didn't short Kiwi CAD, but I shorted Kiwi Swiss, and it's very similar. So we obviously had this weekly bearish move on Kiwi Swiss form. There was this rejection in here. and I was looking to trade it back towards this 5200 low, and that was the close that I quite liked. If you went to the 4-hour time frame, there was this kind of pullback in here, and I ended up shorting below this low through there. But price is at support now. Strength and weakness wise, it's saying Kiwi Swiss should be short, but I know I'm at like a very big weekly level of support, so I don't really want to continue to short that market now, because there's no advantage for me to short it there. Like, here's the best area to short it. As we start to go towards that level, the probability becomes less and less. It becomes more risky. You know what I mean? So when I look at that Kiwi CAD, I would say, how close am I to the area of support or resistance? What's it got to do to get through that? And what's it got to do to kind of, you know, if that makes sense anyway. Hi, Bongo. What are your thoughts on Euro US dollar? Yeah, I can see the downside here, definitely. Obviously, ECB have just held. We were just kind of looking at the monthly chart, and I've shown this a couple of times now. And I mean, I'm not like a huge believer in sort of indicators and things like this, but I like to look at how price is sort of the help visually, right? So I like to see how price reacts in the past. So if I highlight when we get that sort of turning point sort of below the 80 here on the stochastic, we can see that there can often be a move, right? So whether it does happen or not, we don't know. Obviously, we were talking about the seasonals in the market, and we were talking about this dollar index potential low coming through October through to the mid to end of November. So that can also be an influence. We know obviously Euro US dollar is very heavily weighted to the US dollar index. So there are multiple things here to suggest that, not just from a technical point of view, but fundamental point of view, from a seasonal point of view, that there could be some downside to the euro dollar. What I'm watching for, like I said, is we're at this kind of big level, aren't we? You know, how does price react to that? And what do I want to see? I want to see price sort of breach through that. The other thing we looked at as well was obviously some volume analysis. If I grab the fixed range tool and we go from the swing lows to the swing highs, actually, I think it was this one, wasn't it? We wanted to isolate this area through there and see what the sort of highest traded volume level was. We had that 1.0660 area, and you can see prices obviously reacted from that. We had sellers active here before. Those sellers have continued to push price lower. Another factor, we've got this counter trend line support that's being breached at the moment as well. So lots of things to sort of suggest that maybe the euro dollar price is going to start turning a little bit lower here. Okay. Nano is going to the downside. I agree. Right, guy. Thanks, John. I appreciate the analysis and advice. Yeah, you're welcome. So yeah, I think that's all I've got for us, really. Like I said, Kiwi was something I was really interested in. It looks like we have found resistance at that point now. So nice strong resistance level up here. Price is finding resistance at this moment. So that New Zealand dollar weakness looks to be kind of coming back in a little bit, which is something we obviously identified. What else did we look at? We looked at EuroCAD, potential EuroCAD move as well, from this sort of daily chart through there. Pound Aussie, I don't think I'm not really focused too much here, but I can see something potentially building there if we get a breach of trendline support. So yeah, the big one is the dollar index. Dollar index seasonally bullish through October. I like the idea of it targeting 108. Mid to end of November, there's usually a bit of a bearish run, so we've got to keep our eyes out for that. But dollar data is pretty strong at the moment, so I can see the US dollar strength continuing at this moment in time. So yeah, we'll see. I'll leave it there, guys. If you like the stream, please give it a thumbs up. Really appreciate it. Thanks for all joining me today. I appreciate all your comments. Bongo, Rye Guy, Nana, Ifran, Vincent, Justin, Thank you for all commenting and showing some support today. I really appreciate it. Thanks for taking your time to come and watch me for 45 minutes. I appreciate that as well. I hope you had some insights from it. And yeah, I will catch you in the next one. Have a good weekend. Cheers, guys.